me, The Last of Us Part 2 represents the excitement and the trepidation of exploration. Now, obviously that can be in reference to the gameplay itself, the trepidation of not knowing what horrors, both human and infected, could be lurking around the corner of an unsettling, dilapidated set piece, or the excitement of uncovering a hidden note that adds so much more context and depth to this beautiful yet unforgiving post-apocalyptic world. However, not only does The Last of Us Part 2 do this to such great effect within the game itself, but the questions, scenarios and actions the game has its characters face, for me at least, resonated on a much more personal level. The journey of exploration for both main characters Ellie and Abby in this game could extend to your own experiences. The trepidation of stepping into the unknown, and the excitement of growing as a person that comes with such frightening leaps of faith. Hello, I'm Andrew from Cultaholic, and I'll be talking about what The Last of Us Part 2 means to me.
I don't know what happened. I was supposed to take her to the Fireflies and walk away.
So much like a lot of others, my initial impression before the game even came out was, do we even actually need a sequel to one of the greatest games and endings for a game of all time? And of course, naturally, you'd say no to preserve the status of the first game, but I mean, come on, this is Naughty Dog, a studio that's proven time and time again that their storytelling, especially in the games in most recent years, have truly averted expectation. So whilst there was a part of me that was like, no, we don't need a sequel, I personally knew deep down inside that I'd love nothing more than to step back into the gorgeous and brutal world and learn more about Joel or Ellie, or even a completely new cast of characters away from those in the first game. So the world of The Last of Us, whilst often desolate and sparse of actual NPCs, is so full of character, so full of subtle environmental hints and collectibles detailing what could have potentially happened to its inhabitants, and I personally knew I needed more of that. And I'm so glad we did get more of that, because I really feel as though Naughty Dog went above and beyond to enhance the experience of the first game. As soon as you take control of Joel in the opening moments of the game, you're riding your horse across the sunset-drenched hills and fields surrounding Jackson. I was instantly sucked back into that world that, I mean, I really hadn't immersed myself in that world since completing the first game back in 2013, 2014. The set pieces, the music, the dialogue, everything feels so familiar and distinctive to The Last of Us within those first few moments. And while things do feel very familiar, there's also some tweaks and changes, namely in the combat and traversal aspects of the game. We now have the ability to dodge, we can go prone, and we can jump, amongst other things as well. And whilst these may seem like only minor additions to a game, they actually add so much more option and variety to the encounters with enemies that you'll have throughout the experience. It gives you multiple ways you can utilize the environment for, say, like a stealthy approach or a loud approach, and it even gives you the option to play the infected and the humans off one another to clear a safe path for escape. So I distinctly remember an encounter with Ellie in which you're chasing this character through a hospital. It's quite early on in the game, and you fall into this spore-filled room where, I mean, obviously it's The Last of Us. There's a group of clickers lurking about, wanting to get you. And of course, also in classic Last of Us fashion, it's never so simple because a group of armed soldiers also appear. And whilst you could potentially hide and you could wait for both parties to pick one another off, I got into an altercation with one of the soldiers and saw a clicker sort of fast approaching us both, and I kind of panicked a little bit and accidentally managed to hold the soldier hostage in a panic, only to find that I hadn't done something wrong, but there was a unique animation in which you could use the soldier as a shield to feed to the clicker, and that gives you a chance to escape, you can hide, or you can move on to the next enemy. And that's when I realized that The Last of Us Part 2, it begs for you to experiment with the combat scenarios. Rarely will the same scenario play out twice because there's so much variety in the ways that you can use the world and surroundings to your advantage, which to me feels like a natural progression from the first game, because Joel in the first game, he's an older, burlier, grizzled, experienced character. He's been in this world, he's lived in this world for a long time. Whereas Ellie and Abby, they're a lot younger, more agile, and I mean, at least in terms of Ellie, less physically imposing as well. There was no on-screen prompt at all holding my hand, telling me what I can and can't do. It was just the game, trusting you to think for yourself and do whatever it takes to survive in that moment, which just that blew me away. However, as impressive and thrilling as the combat scenarios are, they also now come with a lot more weight. What may have been just like random NPCs in the first game, now in The Last of Us Part 2, they have names, they all have names. Whereas you might not feel any emotional connection to killing the 50th Joe Blogs. I'm looking at you, Mr. Nathan Drake. In The Last of Us Part 2, characters will actually scream out the name of their fallen friends in anger or in sadness or in pain. And that adds to the humanity of those that you might not have thought twice about before in a video game killing. I'll never forget the first time I killed what to me then was just a random NPC, only to have their friend come rushing over and check if they're alright. Or the times that I've took out someone and then their dog gently nudges the fallen owner and whimpers, and oh, it's heartbreaking. Not only that, when we finally shift control over to Abby halfway through the game, only more weight is then added to these moments, as some of these characters we've actually taken out as Ellie, we've got to know, and got to know quite personally as well. It's something I don't think we've really seen in video games before, the sort of shift in the perspective of, oh, we see this character as a good person, you know, because we're playing them and projecting ourselves onto them. And we've seen what they've been through, and that's our definitive take on the character, on who they are as a person. As opposed to sort of maybe looking at it as there's a larger narrative at play here, with consequences and multiple perspectives that we might not initially see, because it's something we haven't really explored so much in the medium of video games before. And that left a huge impression on me that I still think about on a regular basis.
What is this place?
Well, clearly this is some sort of theater, but for fish.
Without a doubt, maybe not only for myself, but also for a lot of others as well. Obviously, The Last of Us Part 2, a game about a post-apocalyptic world coming out at the height of a global pandemic, felt extremely relevant. A little on the nose almost, and as of recording this, we're still actually in the midst of said pandemic. So going back to the idea of exploration I mentioned in the introduction, there's also a lot of parallels I felt between both the game and real life too. I felt as though there's a lot of trepidation and fear of not knowing what to expect next from the world, juxtaposed with the excitement and the happiness, now at a time where we physically have to be apart from one another, coming together and being closer than we've ever really been before, to lift one another up and keep spirits as high as possible. Just as Ellie and Abby explore their own morals, motivations and relationships in an attempt to grow, I feel as though a lot of us have had that time to reflect and explore such parts of ourselves as well. This game and its themes really helped me understand what I should be prioritising more in my personal life, and the things I should let go in order to grow and move on as a person. And I understand that all of this is going to come off as very preachy or incredibly corny, but for me personally, I truly do believe that The Last of Us fundamentally changed my way of thinking, in that you don't really know both sides of the story until you really do know both sides of the story. And I honestly believe it's vital that we educate ourselves, we don't jump to conclusions, and we really open up to understand one another and our thought processes on certain things. And whilst the general consensus of The Last of Us Part 2 is that it's a dark, unforgiving, brutal story filled with sadness, and I mean, you can't deny that. I think there's such a strong emphasis running throughout that focuses on love, friendships, relationships, and above all else, hope. And I believe that really shines through more than anything in these games. And I believe that that is the foundation of this story, that at this period of time, that really resonated with me in ways other pieces of media really haven't done before.
Ellie, I think Shimmer's getting sick.
What? How can you tell?
She sounds a little hoarse.
Oh, boy.
Come on, that was a good one.
So other than the opening and instantly getting drawn back into that world, as I mentioned earlier, yes. Absolutely 100% yes, there was a moment where this game clicked for me so much. And that comes in the form of the first open area you actually encounter in the game, with Ellie and Dina, and that is the downtown Seattle quarantine zone. The sense of scale in this area can be overwhelming almost to begin with, because it's not really something we've seen in a Last of Us game up to this point. You know, a franchise that really is fairly linear, one track, A to B, you go from here to there in its level design. But I believe that this area is where all the elements that make The Last of Us special really shine the most. So you've got the environmental storytelling, trying to piece together what happened to this particular quarantine zone and who the WLF are, this self-appointed militant force. You've got the excellent back and forth dialogue and character development of Ellie and Dina, both trading stories, they're getting to know one another a little better, and they're doing this all whilst poking light-hearted fun at one another. You have the exploration aspect as well, finding a dilapidated bank and learning about a group of thieves that were planning a heist in the height of the pandemic, only for things to go, obviously, horribly awry for them. You've got the combat with the infected, you've got environmental puzzles that require you to use new methods of traversal, and my personal favourite part, if you happen to find the guitar in the music shop, a beautiful, and I mean a beautiful rendition of Aha's Take On Me that Ellie plays whilst Dina silently sits and watches is, oh my goodness, it's just one of the best parts I've ever seen in a video game, I think. And all these parts together in this open expansive area just best represents what The Last of Us is. It's a game that, in my opinion, expertly pulls you from its harsh sobriety that, yep, most things are going to want to and try to kill you, but you've also got moments of well-written humour, humanity and levity in there as well. And a whole chunk of these things are completely missable too if you don't take the time to really let yourself explore every inch of the area. But because the area is so rich with detail and potential surprises or even tools that you can use later on in the game to help you out in combat situations, nothing actually feels like a chore. Instead, you're compelled to learn and understand and explore this area more, which I think it was slightly missing in the first game, but it absolutely clicked with me here.
If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. Everything I have found here, I'm not found by myself.
For me, there's so much I could choose from. The writing, the story, the character development, the acting, the set pieces. But honestly, I think if I was to choose one thing, I feel as though the game would truly be lacking something if it wasn't for its unbelievable soundtrack. The soundtrack adds so much to the experience in its entirety, whether it's to build tension in a combat encounter, or to evoke certain emotions in you during cutscenes, or even to really unsettle you with ambient noise in some of the game's most fear-inducing moments. It pairs so well with everything that you're viewing on the screen. The sole, isolated banjo that plays the main theme of the game is so familiar to that of the main theme from the first game, yet it feels more eerie, it feels more on edge and tinged in sadness to reflect the state of Ellie in Part 2. Oh, and the music that plays in the incredible flashback sequences throughout the game feel familiar, feel nostalgic for a time when Ellie and Abby hadn't really gone through the traumas that they were about to encounter later on in life. And most of the songs follow very similar themes, but either they add something or they take away elements to reflect the emotion of the scene and the characters, which, it sounds like a very obvious concept, but honestly, the simplicity and the rawness, and there's even like a slight out of tune nature of the instruments, it all adds to this vulnerability you hear in the music, and that elevates the whole experience tenfold and really is so integral to what The Last of Us is, in my opinion. And if I'm to talk about the music, I cannot forget about the inclusion of Future Days by Pearl Jam in this game. The whole game almost feels like it's built around this one song, and the lyric, "If I ever were to lose you, I'd truly lose myself," which takes on so many meanings throughout different parts of the game, and it follows Ellie from the start of her obsession for vengeance right to the end of her realization that she truly has lost herself. That message is incredibly poignant, and it's made even more so by the fact that the sublime score is underneath this whole entire experience, and also the unbelievably clever and well thought out use of future days.
Oh, hello. Sorry, the dinosaurs are busy right now.
What are you doing?
Oh, wait. One of the dinosaurs is here. Joel, it's for you.
Very funny.
That was pretty funny. Did you get it? It's because you're old.
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I've played The Last of Us Part 2 3 times fully through since its release last year, and not in spread out sections either. Literally completed it again, and then completed it again 3 times back to back. So the first time was just going through and enjoying the story and really soaking everything in. And then the second time was like a clean-up playthrough, get any of the collectibles I might have missed. And then, because I was so enamored with the story and so intrigued as to whether there was any more Easter eggs I might have missed, or hints, or subtle nuances that I might have missed in my initial playthrough, I decided to go back for a third time. And even playing through the game 3 times in a row, everything still managed to hit super hard, and with still the same raw emotion that I felt in my first playthrough as well. If not more, actually, knowing what was coming for these characters this time around. And Naughty Dog do such a great job of making you fall in love with these characters that you almost don't want the game to end. You don't want to leave them because you're so invested in the journey. And whilst I honestly believe the game ultimately focuses on the themes of hope and love, the path to those realizations the characters take is a heavy one. It's very heavy. So whilst I've thought about the game almost daily since completing it, I haven't actually gone back recently for another playthrough. Yet I know it won't be long before I'll be pressing the PlayStation button on my controller and booting up the game once again.
Talking away. I don't know what I'm to say. I'll say it anyway. Today's another day to find you shying away. I'll be coming for you, love, okay?
I feel as though, obviously, with all the leaks that came out prior to its release, people have either taken a strong love or hate stance on the game. And I truly believe that those that are firmly in the camp of, I'm never going to play this game because X happens to this character, those are the ones that are really missing out on one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking and bittersweet stories told not only in video games, but in the entertainment medium as a whole. If you like well-crafted, fleshed-out, thought-provoking characters and stories filled with drama, intense combat, and rich, detailed environments, I would 100% wholeheartedly recommend you play this game. And if you haven't played the original, perhaps go and do that first to get more context and connection to the characters and the world. But The Last of Us Part 2, in its 20 to 24 hour story time, it takes you on a journey full of twists and turns and surprises that continuously keep you on your toes, subvert your expectations, and keeps you just wanting more. And that is what The Last of Us Part 2 means to me.